Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Sensitive Podcast. I am your host, Kimball, somatic leadership coach for highly sensitive and neurodivergent business owners. And I am here today with Lisa Olivera. I was telling her before the call started, I am feeling all of this like excitement up and out energy, and I am allowing myself to feel that and also grounding myself. I am just overjoyed to have her on the call. And before I wax too poetic, I'm just going to allow her to introduce herself before we dive in.
Thank you for that. I'm so happy to be here. My name's Lisa Olivera. I always get so stuck on the introduction question because I feel like that is so swirly in my mind right now of like what I'm leading with. But I suppose what feels the most present right now is I'm a human before everything else, and that has always been like a very deep part of my work. I'm a therapist, a writer, a mother, an author, a question asker, a photographer, and really I'm someone who's in like an ongoing relationship with my own inner exploration and my own sense of self and what it means to be human in the world. I think that is a core piece of all of what I do, and I do it in different ways. And yeah, those are some of the ways that shows up in. So I guess that's sort of the quickest introduction. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I know your Substack, which is one of the only ones that I read faithfully. And I protect my time when I'm reading your Substack. I feel like it's the one that I kind of just sit down. I savor it slowly. I try to have like a warm lemon water by me and just really cozy up and read it. Is called Human Stuff. For anyone who is not signed up for Lisa's Substack, please do. It is just so lovely and wonderful. Um, and even just, the name Human Stuff with what you're describing of like really learning to be human is the core of your work. There are many different expressions of that. This dives into, my first question about, how your work has so greatly influenced my own. I know I have shared that. And I really look at it, I'm like, oh, one of my core offerings, the name was How to Be Human. So
Mm.
we have a very similar lens, I think, on our work. But specifically, how you seem to weave deep acceptance for yourself and your writing has really profoundly impacted the way that I relate to myself. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share a bit of your journey about accepting yourself.
Goodness, that's so kind, first of all. And thank you for saying that. It really like warms my heart. And yeah, it reminds me that I'm not ever alone in anything that I'm doing, which is always something that feels so good to remember. So thank you. And I think self acceptance and just acceptance of what is has been my lifelong practice, my lifelong process. I had a very difficult experience at birth of being abandoned and left by my birth mother, and grew up not knowing where I came from and not knowing why that happened, and having this deep longing for something that I never knew how to name, and this deep sense of feeling like something was wrong with me and feeling like I didn't belong. And so I think having that be sort of my entry into the world and the way that I started to see the world from a really young age kind of forced me into having to learn how to accept what had happened and accept what my story was, and also accept all the ways that it really confused me about who I truly was and pulled me away from my true essence, from my truest self, and the ways that my own pain kept me from being able to see myself clearly. And at one point during my teenage years, I did not want to be here anymore. I had attempted to end my life several times and spent several years in and out of hospitals and was just in a very, very deep place of struggle. And when I started going to therapy and started unpacking and sort of unfurling some of what I had been holding for so long, I realized that there was this other option and there was this other way of being with everything that I had experienced that I just didn't know how to access before and didn't know was even available to me. And so I think I've been like learning how to live into that other option ever since. I'll be 38 next week. And so it's been like 25 years really of learning how to not only accept what happened, but also accept the ongoing process of grief and the ongoing process of being with the challenging parts of my experience. Not only what happened when I was born, but also many things since that I don't really share about publicly, but that are part of my story too. And I've found this practice of acceptance and being with what is and letting myself have my natural process of grief and anger and fear and disappointment and all the things that I long pushed away in the process of like learning how to actually welcome all of those into my experience and meet them and offer them what they need from me and what they often needed from other people that they didn't get. I have found that like the pain and the grief doesn't go away, but there's so much more space in me to meet it with love and with tenderness and with care. And there's so much relief in realizing that that's often all that I need. Like, I don't need everything to change. What I need is like my own tenderness, my own willingness to stay, my own practice of being with what is, and my own willingness to let things change and flow and move when they naturally do, because they always do if I let them. And I think that is just an ongoing practice that I've woven into every part of my life and every part of my own sense of, yeah, like being present and being here. And I certainly don't do it perfectly. And I certainly have so many moments where I forget. And I think that remembrance is also part of the practice, like remembering that to forget is to be human too. And to start again is to let ourselves be human and let ourselves not need to get to a certain place before we get to practice again and again. And yeah, all of that has just really allowed me to sort of soften into what I'm experiencing a little bit easier and learn to offer myself and others what is needed at the moment. Um, yeah, that's sort of what comes up as you ask that. And as I reflect on just my experience of like what acceptance means and what that practice looks like for me. Yeah.
Mm. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing such sacred and tender parts of your own story and your own journey. And of course, my story is different, but like so many people who I'm sure can relate to many elements of your story, although the specifics are different, this feeling of something being wrong with me is so pervasive for so many of us. And for me, I think that the entry point for that was my neural complexity, my sensitivity, some things in my childhood as well that came up. And it has also been my own lifelong practice, which is likely why your work impacts me so greatly, is because I had this profound idea or drive to fix it. There was this like, just got to fix it. And if I can fix it, then I will feel better. And acceptance is the paradoxical thing that has helped me to feel better than any fixing ever has. Because, like you have shared, it's not that the circumstances change or that the grief goes away or that this is any less challenging. It's just that there's more room for it. There's less resistance to it. right?
Mm.
It's just realizing that it's one sacred part of your story, and it gets to be one part, and it doesn't have to take up all of it even,
Yeah.
right? Um
Yeah.
and so I don't think anything has had as profound of an impact on my life as acceptance has. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for you describing it in this way too.
Thank you. Yeah, I so resonate with what you shared. And I don't think I'll ever get over the power of that practice and the way that it so often does lead us to where we're needing to go in ways that we think things like fixing or shaming or controlling or forcing will. It's like, it feels like it shouldn't be the path. And yet it is always revealing itself to be the path for me.
Yeah, and I honestly, as you're sharing that, I'm chuckling because I want people to know that if you are a fixer, a controller, if that's kind of your natural impetus like me, I'm very much that person. And if you kind of had, like, for me to get to a point even of experimenting with acceptance, I had to go through years of the fixing not working, right? And so even if you're the type of person where you're kind of banging your head against the wall of trying to fix, trying to control, I just hope this can be a little bit of encouragement for you. Um, Even just trying it, just a drop, you know, just a drop in your experience.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add to that is that I think there's also just so much room to have such like a loving openness to the strategy of fixing and the strategy of trying to control and like how intelligent and wise that strategy is and how deeply we try and protect ourselves in so many ways and try to keep ourselves safe and try to make sure we're okay and make sure we're in connection and like all the ways that some of these strategies and tendencies can arise. I I think the more I look at acceptance in the ways that it's sort of brought this new way of being into my life, the more reverence I have for all the things that I try outside of acceptance, even when they don't work and even when they often end up making me feel worse. I can see the goodness in trying so many different ways to protect and keep myself safe. And I can see the care that I think so much of that can come from, even when it doesn't bring us to where we're wanting to go. I just so see like the intention of protection and care that I think that can bloom from. And I'm always trying to hold that for myself too when I notice some of that arising, like, oh, this is here again. And like, can I have care actually that this old thing is coming up to try and protect me again? Like, thank you, strategy, for doing the job you think you need to do. And like, can we pivot to something else that feels more whole and like that has more room for all of me? Um, yeah, I just find so much reverence for even the strategies that don't work. Um, and I think the practice of acceptance has really brought that forward for me in a lot of ways.
Mm. Thank you for naming that. I noticed like my solar plexus just softening as you named that. And it feels so good to acknowledge the ways that these patterns are trying their absolute hardest to protect us, and they'll soften at the time when we have enough support for them to soften.
Yeah.
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 That's so true.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I know that you already have one published book already enough, which I have read and given to clients even, as I know I've shared with you, and it's wonderful. And I also know that you, I think, recently turned in your manuscript for your next book, which I believe is entitled When the Ache Remains: Lessons on Tending to the Unfixable and Finding Beauty Anyway, which gorgeous title by the way. It seems like acceptance may also be a core theme in this book, and I'm wondering if you're willing to share a bit about what inspired you to write it and what the process was like for you.
Yeah, thank you. After my first book came out, it came out 3 months after I became a mother, and I just found myself again in this place of feeling lost and confused and unmoored and far away from myself, and a lot of my own pre-verbal trauma and grief, like, really came to the surface again in ways that I just didn't know how to make sense of and didn't want to even admit were back again. And I think I was confronted with the reality that some part of me still thought that those things were like gone for good. And some little part of me still thought that I wouldn't have to sort of circle back to some of these like deeply held stories and beliefs and sense of identity that I had not really wanted to circle back to again. And I think in that confrontation and in that reckoning with, oh, all of this is here again, but now in a new way. And it's asking me to approach and hold it with a new perspective and a new sense of holding. I I went through this process of deep internal work and of looking at parts of myself in ways that I hadn't before. And it really revealed to me just the ways that I was really holding on to wanting to fix some of these things still, and how much softening was being asked of me. And just started doing a lot of writing, a lot of poetry and vignettes and um more lyrical writing and writing that felt very different from my first book, which was primarily like written as a self-help, like therapist perspective book. Some of my story was woven in, but it was a much more sort of linear, like beginning, middle, end kind of book. And then I found myself in this place of feeling like there is no beginning or middle or end. Like I'm just here and I'm having to face these things. And like, what do I do with all of this? And so the book and the writing really came from my own experience of learning new ways to be with the things that will never actually be fixed, learning new ways to be with myself and my pain and my wounds that may never fully close, and learning to find aliveness and beauty and vitality and connection, not like on some imaginary other side of like becoming this person I think I need to be okay, but actually of like using some of my own pain and my own grief as an avenue to finding aliveness and joy and presence and connection. And I think I've been in this practice the last few years, especially of using these parts of myself that I thought I needed to sort of get rid of or put away, and actually letting them become part of what helps me reemerge into the world again as this sort of unfamiliar version of myself that I am still becoming and still learning. And so the writing was really started as my own anchor of understanding what was happening and trying to remember what I know to be true, even though I forget sometimes. And it's still in process. My editor is going to get the manuscript edits back to me soon, and it's still being shaped, but it feels, yeah, it like feels so much more like me, I think, than the first book did. And I think the first book felt like me 5 years ago when I wrote it. And this book feels like just sort of like a deepened sense of understanding and a more expansive sense of what it means to meet our pain and our grief, but to also let in beauty and joy and the presence that I think so many of us are just wanting to return to rather than getting rid of everything that's hard. Um, yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I will, of course, be buying and reading it when it comes out, and it feels like a treasure to have this personal backstory that you're sharing with me here about it. So I can't wait whenever it comes out. And gosh, can I relate to the resurfacing of things when you become a mother? That was certainly my experience as well. And I also found a tremendous anchor in poetry. I am so grateful for the journal app on my phone that they came out with because I always have my phone with me. I don't always have a pen and paper with me. And, like poems would just come to me fully formed, especially I would say in the first year. Um, and it really was my way of the internal grappling and sorting things out within me. Um, and that was really my primary way of writing in that first year. So I relate to what you shared so much. Yeah.
Mm, that's so beautiful. Yeah, there's something about that portal, that initiation that I think really brings in this like new way of being with the material that it provides and the language that I think our bodies start to sort of feel and give voice to in that phase of life and in any big transition, I think. I think it does open up this sense of, yeah, like this sort of direct line to the parts of us that know what to say, the parts of us that know what we need to say in ways that we might not have before, which is just so powerful to notice.
Yeah, and I have read, um, I don't know, because I haven't read research articles on this, but I have read over and over again how during that period of time, it is the most one of the most malleable times for your brain. And so it sort of makes sense what we're discussing from an experiential lens, also just from a neuroscience lens and what is happening to your brain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And yeah, such a reminder too that like in the seasons of life where we think we're like losing ourselves, there's actually some part of us that's actually coming online even stronger in some way. And I think that feels really rooted and grounded to remember, even going forward into different seasons of change. Like, oh, there are parts of me that are actually going to become more alive because of this sort of unfamiliar, uncertain new territory. And that feels really empowering to, yeah, to keep in mind.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful reminder. Well, I know we've already alluded to the fact that this is a huge question and perhaps that it's our lifelong question, at least for you and I thus far. But I would love to know how you've been able to find beauty in your own life amidst the unfixable. Like, what are your practices of doing that, your ways of doing that for you specifically?
I love that question because I think, like you said, I'll be finding the answers to it forever. And I think one of the biggest things, honestly, has been like making just as much space for the stuff that I don't want to look at, like making just as much space for the grief and the sorrow and the rage and the loneliness and the fear. And I think as I've been able to welcome the things that I don't often want to surround myself with, I have such a more natural inclination to let in beauty and light and connection and joy too. And it becomes less of a thing that I am like drawn toward because I think I need it or something, and more of a, oh, like I have so much more space to be open to it when it arises and so much more space to be available to receive it when it's here because I'm also allowing myself to receive everything else too. And I think when I did not know how to be with the things that were hard, I also did not know how to be with beauty. I did not know how to be with joy. I did not know how to be with connection or awe or wonder or all the things that I want to be with. And I didn't expect to answer that question that way, but I do really feel like when we can make room for like the whole of our experience, the goodness naturally becomes more available too. And with all that said, I also think that because I know things like beauty and joy and connection and awe and tenderness and Like all the things that make life beautiful are so integral to me. I also really try to just keep my eyes open to them, to keep my eyes and my heart open to really feeling it when it's here, to not need it to be or look a certain way to be meaningful, but to stay really open to being surprised by what delights me or being surprised by what brings me awe or being moved by something that I wouldn't expect to be. So I think there's also something about like letting go of what I even think beauty or joy are sometimes and just noticing my felt sense of, oh, like some part of me is really receiving this as pleasurable or beautiful or moving. And maybe I don't need to always have it be in this small container of what I think that is, but can I just open myself up to receiving it and to looking for it and to noticing and fully experiencing it when it's here? And and so I think also just like a practice of presence is one of the biggest ways that I stay really rooted in letting myself fully experience the goodness of being alive. Um, and that's also something I didn't always know how to do or didn't know I could do. And I even feel moved, like I feel my heart almost like warming thinking about how much easier that's become for me and how, yeah, like how much more willing I am to let myself experience things that are good and how much less fear there is around those things going away than there used to be. Um, and I think that's another piece too is like letting it all be impermanent and that impermanence actually being part of what makes something so awe-inducing. It's like the sunset never stays, it always fades and it comes back, but like there's always a leaving and there's always a saying goodbye to it for now. And there's something that's so beautiful to me about like being willing to fully let in something beautiful, even while you know that it's not going to be here forever. And I think that becoming a mother has taught me a lot about that too. Like I feel so much grief at every change of stage and change of development and every like small moment of letting go just a little bit more and a little bit more. And then there's like just these tidal waves of joy and connection and wonder and like deep presence and deep ability to appreciate the sweet little moments. Probably more so because I know that they're going to change at some point. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but that is sort of what that's kind of how I'm holding like what it means to be with beauty and what it means to know that it's ever changing and ever leaving and then ever returning and just the tenderness in that.
Mm. What I heard in that, Lisa, was that same theme of allowing yourself to fully be human,
Yeah.
of really allowing the full emotional range of being with the grief, of being with the joy, of the valleys and the mountaintops, the impermanence of it all, the ever-changing nature of it all, um, and practicing presence with all of it, the fluctuations, the full range. Um, and I have a similar experience of motherhood really cracking me open to that in this very deep, profound way. I remember when my son was born and they cut the cord, I remember being so cognizant of the thought, this is the closest he will ever be to me. And every moment of every day, he is getting further away from me from this point onward. And just like you're saying of like there's these incredible moments that you're there for, and then the bottom is gonna drop out and there's gonna be some sort of sickness or temper tantrum or whatever it is, depends on your parenting stage. But just learning to be with all of it. And I think we forget a lot of the times that when we try to mute or blunt different parts of our human experience, that we can't selectively do that is really, what I'm hearing you talk about here. We can't selectively numb grief or pain and not expect to numb our joy, our presence, our the mountaintop moments that we would like to have, right? This full human experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be so hard to find like an anchor in that and to find safety in that and to find okayness in that because that sense of uncertainty and that sense of fleetingness can be so overwhelming sometimes. And I know that I certainly don't always like feel fully present when my daughter is having like a meltdown. I'm like, I notice myself having so many experiences of like wanting to change things and not wanting it to be that way and wanting to just make it better. Like all these ways that I can leave the moment so easily and so often. And I think it's just such a reminder that like that too is such a human thing. Like being in a constant sort of practice of remembering and forgetting and leaving and straying the ways that we want to be in the world and the ways that we want to be open to what's unfolding. It like that is like such a reminder of our humanity rather than something that's in the way. And I said to a friend the other day, like, this thing isn't in the way, like it is the way. And I'm sure some philosopher or something has said that before. I don't know where I heard that, but I keep coming back to that. Like, this is the way, like this frustration or this immense gratitude or this deep grief or this hole that I can't seem to get out of or this sense of everything's better now and then something bad happening or it's like all of this is the way. And when I remember that, I think I remember how I want to be with it all and how I want to be as myself in it all, even though I will never do that perfectly. Um, it's just such an ongoing practice, all of it.
Mm. It's profoundly self-compassionate
Mhm.
lens to look through. I love that so much.
Mhm.
Well, I know that we have already talked about this even in this conversation of how once you write a book, now a lot of times what you have written already feels far away. It doesn't feel exactly true to you anymore because you're obviously continuing to grow and evolve as a person. And so I'm curious how you find the courage to share your writing, knowing that you're going to shift, you're going to change, and it may no longer feel completely authentic to you.
Mhm. That's been such a learning curve for me or a learning edge, growing edge. That's the saying, a growing edge. Um, because I think there can be this sense of like embarrassment or shame or regret or something if I like look back and realize that something I said or wrote feels so different from how I feel now. And there can be this sense of almost like wanting to go back and like edit and erase and get rid of and like let that version of me not exist to anyone. And I think of that even when I think of work that I was sharing publicly like 8 years ago. Like it was so much more prescriptive and so much more didactic and so much more of a like from just from a therapist lens. And it just felt a lot more simple, I think, than some of the work I share now does, and a lot more from the head than from the heart in some ways, as I was trying to find my way in learning my voice and learning how I wanted to share. And, sometimes I want to go back and like erase old posts or erase old things that I've shared years and years ago. And I try to remember that, like, I would not be sharing from the place I am now if that didn't get shared the way that it was, and I wouldn't be able to access my voice now if it hadn't grown from the voice that I've had before, and I try to remember that changing and that growing and that, like, shedding old beliefs and old ways of seeing and old ways of being is is a reminder of growth rather than something to be ashamed of. And I think remembering that we're meant to grow and change and evolve, and that it's a sign of being more open to the world rather than less, is such a humbling thing to return to when I find myself wondering, like, how am I going to feel about this a year from now? Even the book manuscript that I just turned in, I'm like, what if it comes out a year from now, which is around when it's supposed to come out in April of 2026. So yeah, around a year from now, I have thoughts of, like, what if it comes out a year from now and the world is totally different and I feel totally different and it feels irrelevant based on the version that exists when it comes out, knowing that I wrote it from the version that existed when I wrote it. But I think there's something actually really um meaningful about getting to see these almost archives of ourselves and getting to share these pieces of ourselves from places that we've been, from people that we've been, knowing that, like, the only thing that they will do is change, because the only thing that we will do is change. Like, that's such a rooted experience for all of us, is being ever changing, fluid, like ever growing humans, even if we feel like we're not. And so I think there's just so much relief in letting change be a natural process rather than a hindrance to sharing what feels true and right now. Um, I also just, look to so many people that I admire and that I learn from and see all the ways that they've changed over the years and the ways that what they share has shifted with time, and how I actually really deeply admire that. And I don't think that it's a sign of incongruence or inauthenticity or something. I see it as a sign of, oh, like, they're really devoted to sharing what's true for them as they grow and change. And so what they share grows and changes with them. And, like, what a gift to allow that, and what a gift to allow that in ourselves too. Like, to not let the inevitability of change prevent us from going in and sharing what we want to share in the version of ourselves that exists now. Um, I think there's just so much, like, relief and permission and willingness and an orientation to imperfection as being the only option that we have in all of this, that really just feels like it opens the doors a little bit more to share what feels true now, and to learn from what has changed, and to learn from what's shifted in me, to look at what I've shared and written before and learn from reading that, like, all the ways that my own understanding of myself and the world has grown. Um, and it's almost like seeing it that way. It makes me hope to look back 5 years from now and see all the ways my sense of the world has shifted and changed. It's like I want that for myself now. I want that experience of being able to sort of archive and document my own, um, like, my own unfolding and my own expansion of understanding. Um, and I think when I see that in other people, I see it as such a beautiful way of being in the world. And so it just gives me the courage to practice that imperfectly, but, like, to be willing to practice it in the ways that I feel like I can.
Mm. Yeah, it really hit me as you were speaking exactly what you said of, um, you know, sharing the book now, was informed by all of the ways that you had to stretch and using your voice and your prior book, right? That it is through the process itself of sharing, really, partly, that you come to a new place, that you shift, that you grow, that you evolve. And again, that the acceptance of that process, it seemed like acceptance as well of acceptance of your evolution,
Yeah.
acceptance of you going to the fact that you're going to change, that is also part of your humanity, uh,
Mhm.
really strips away this need for perfectionism or this need for a perfectly curated image, or am I portraying the version of me who I think that they want to see? And if not, then I need to erase and edit out. And oh no, I can't allow people to think that I once thought this way, right? And instead there can be this profound, deep acceptance of, yeah, this was part of my journey, and this is what has led me here now. And that also, what I hear and what you're sharing, can be such a permission slip, for lack of a better word, for other people to do the same, to allow for their own growth, for their own evolution, the same as you're looking to other people and admiring that they're doing that. Other people are looking to you and admiring that you're allowing yourself to do that too. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's like this give and take of like, oh, when you do it, I can do it too. And when I do it, you can do it too. And it's like this, yeah, this way of breaking down this idea that we're supposed to be one thing and be one way and be predictable and be steady when actually we're so meant to change and grow and be fluid and be affected by the things that happen to and around us and let those things shift how we see ourselves in the world. Like, I can't think of anything that is more, yeah, that's more human than like letting ourselves change and not seeing that as a detriment to what we know and to our sense of integrity, but as like proof of it and proof of our, yeah, our willingness to let ourselves be moved by life and let that moving shift how we see and how we are. That feels like such a gift to like hold on to and remember in the wobbliness that can come from like choosing to show up, knowing that how you show up now may look different than how you do at some point in the future.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the multifaceted nature of being human and not pigeonholing ourselves into one thing, I know obviously even in your introduction, you said you're a mother, you're a therapist, you're a writer. I know I've mentioned my son already, that he's 2 years old, and his birth, caring for him was just, it's been a huge thing. It's rocked my world, to put it very lightly. And I would love to hear what has been your journey with continuing to be devoted and carving out pockets of time for your craft of writing amidst motherhood.
I've had to really let go of what I think that is supposed to look like for it to count or be real or be good enough. Like it certainly doesn't always look like waking up before my family and like lighting a candle and meditating and having this beautiful like desk set up for me to journal peacefully in. Like it does not look like that usually. Usually it looks like my husband like being willing to take my daughter and play with her in the living room while I journal like still in bed, trying to like have a little bit of pocket to myself before re-entering my family. Or it looks like going to a coffee shop after I drop her off at preschool and doing some writing there for an hour rather than having a whole day. Um, but I think letting go of expectation of what it means to have a legitimate writing practice has been really the main thing. And that has opened me up to seeing how much I can actually get done in a little bit of time. Um, and I think I've actually realized that, you know, when I did have a life where I had like full days devoted to writing, I would never spend a full day writing. Like my brain could not do that actually. So there's been something humbling about knowing that I actually only need like little bits of time here or there. And for now, I find ways to make that enough. Of course, there are times where I long for more and where I wish I had more time and more space. And I know that that will come in a different season. But I think for now, I'm really leaning into learning from what can be done with less and learning that less time and less space doesn't necessarily have to mean I'm not able to do the creative work that I want to do, that it just might need to look different than I think it does. Um, And I also think that that word you used, devotion, feels very rooted and strong for me. And I remind myself of why writing matters to me and why sharing my writing matters to me and why staying in the practice of writing matters to me. And I think in staying rooted to that sense of why and that sense of devotion, I can let all the little ways that I practice it be enough, knowing that they add up to something. And also, yeah, like getting rid of this idea that in order to write, I need to like be away from my family. That's something that I've really been thinking a lot about recently. I just recently went to an art exhibit at the SF MoMA with Ruth Azala, and um, her studio was in her living room, and she had 6 children. And she talked about always creating art in her living room with her children around so that they could see her doing what she loves. And so now, like, I even feel myself getting teary thinking about it. I will like write my newsletter sometimes with my daughter next to me, and she like writes her little pretend newsletter and talks about how she wants to write a newsletter one day and how she like wants to write about things that make her think and things that bring her joy. And um so I also just think about like writing in the living room, like while she's playing, writing little bits at the kitchen table while it's crowded and messy, and like letting that be something that actually teaches me more about myself and what I want to say and what wants to come through me rather than something that gets in the way of having access to my own voice. Um, and so I think it's a constant learning and a constant practice, but I think returning to that devotional knowing and that like willingness to stay in the practice and to let it shift and change as the seasons of my life do has been such a teacher in a surprising way and has showed me things that I thought I needed that I actually don't always need um, to do the work that matters to me. Um, and also all the barriers that I can create for myself that are so often just internal. And when I let what I have be enough, it's like, oh, there's actually some space. There's not hours of space, but there is some space to sit with the page and see what there and return to it when I have more space. So it's almost like the constricted container is allowing me to practice like my practice of writing in ways that I just didn't think to do before because I had the time. Um, and I'm trying to learn um, from the limitations rather than always have this sense of like everything's just in the way. It's like, how can I be with everything that I think is in the way and still see what can come out, even if it's not, this like hyper productive sense of writing and creating that I think I'm supposed to have.
I can't tell you how true everything you just shared is of my experience of creative work and really just working in general amidst right now my time limitations of, motherhood, but really, for any listeners, it could be any limitations, it doesn't obviously
Yeah.
have to be motherhood. Um, and my experience is so similar, like I said, of the limitations on my time actually eliminating, oh, I didn't actually need all this time, and also clarifying, immensely clarifying what is most important to me and why, and how much I can get done with very little. Um, and how a lot of what is keeping me from things is expectations a lot of times for it to look a certain way or be a certain way. I haven't once gotten up before my son to do my work. I start my day, my feet hits the ground with him, saying downstairs, let's go downstairs. And um, my brain is the type of brain that really likes to have long stretches of time to work. So it's been quite an adjustment for me of,
Yeah.
okay, I don't have 2 hours or 3 hours or even 4 hours to work on this something and an extended period of time. But like you said, being able to sort of dip your toe in and then come back out, and then dip your toe in and then come back out. And oftentimes I find for me, I'm like, oh, then I come back with new ideas.
Mm.
Then I come back with a fresh perspective. Then I come back with different thoughts that I wouldn't have had if I just sat down and kind of dumped everything at once. And so, yes, there are limitations. And then there are also gifts, much like what we're talking about, the fullness of the human experience, right? Just allowing it all to be there. And like you were saying, of not putting these confines of ideas of how we need it to be, allowing the practice, the devotion to our craft, whatever that craft may be, to change and to shift with whatever season you're in. I feel like the difficulty comes when we rigidly fixate on it needing to be how it was, or needing it to be in a certain way that doesn't fit with the season of life that you're in. But really, when we allow it to morph and change and shape shift, we can see, oh, it does fit even here amidst these limitations.
Yeah. And I honestly think that I had to have, again, like a grieving process too. Like I had to really grieve my life not being the way that it was before, that felt a lot more well suited to being able to do the work that I wanted to do. Like I had to grieve losing a lot of my time and a lot of my space and a lot of my energy in some ways. I had to grieve like losing the version of myself that existed before so much of my inner self was going toward taking care of this child. And I think for a while, I didn't think that I was supposed to have to do that because I thought I was just supposed to feel grateful and just supposed to feel the love and the joy and the gift of this child. And I do feel that all the time. And like there is a very real loss of what life was like before that and what my creative self was able to do before that and what my brain had the capacity for before that. And I think I've had to like have this process of like really grieving that and really letting that go so that I can fully be with what is here. Um and giving myself permission to let grieving the version of myself that existed before not mean that I'm not happy and grateful and content and learning with and from the version of myself that exists now that I'm a parent. Um, and I think allowing, again, like you said, the grief and the joy to both be part of this experience is such a grantor of, um, yeah, permission to feel all of it, and knowing that in feeling all of it, there's so much more space to see, like, okay, this is what's here now. Like, what can I do with this? Rather than always seeing it as, gosh, like this is in the way and I used to have so much more time. And which I think I did do for a while. I did do this sense of like, how am I supposed to do any of this now? Like, how am I supposed to be a functioning person? How am I supposed to be creative when I'm trying to get my kid to eat their dinner? Like, how I don't understand how all of this is going to work together. Um, and it's like even letting that come through, that sense of like, this is hard sometimes. And um, can I not let that mean that there aren't so many places where there's room to like still be rooted in this version of myself that still exists, even though this new role is like pulling from me in some ways that I didn't have before. Um, and I think that's just an ongoing process too of like, yeah, noticing when it feels hard and letting it feel hard so that I can get back to like, okay, how can I be here? Like, how can I practice here with what I have? Um, yeah.
I love that so much. Well, I can't tell you how much joy it brings me to see your photographs in your Substack, woven into your Substack human stuff, as I've mentioned, because I'm also, well, I consider myself a photographer. I've done my own darkroom work for a long time, and I love manual photography, even in this digital age. Like, I crave and long for being able to do darkroom work again. Um, And I would love to hear, I kind of had in my head, I was like, if I ever get to talk to Lisa, I want to ask her about her photography. So I would love to hear what you love about photography.
I love that you asked that. It makes my eyes like well up with tears because, yeah, that practice feels so important to me. And it has felt like such a personal practice of mine since I went to like a photography camp in middle school. Um, it has just always been like a place of refuge for me, a place of kind of like being in my own little world, like feeling like everything else falls away, but what I'm interacting with. And I think with film photography in particular, it it's like it forces me, or I shouldn't say force because it doesn't force, it's by choice. But like it allows me to choose to look at something a little bit longer. It allows me to linger in a moment a little bit longer than I might otherwise. And it allows me to practice like seeing very clearly what I'm interacting with, what is evoking something in me, what is mirroring something to me, what just simply looks beautiful to me. Um, and I think in that practice of like looking and seeing, it really helps me practice like seeing a little bit more clearly outside of when I'm taking a photo too. It's like I notice that when I go out and take photos, when I come back, I feel a lot more present, even when I'm not in the practice of like looking around me and seeing what I want to take a photo of. I feel like it translates in some way to like how I see the moments happening in my life and how I see even how I see my internal world playing out. It's like something about having this ongoing practice of taking imperfect photos that I don't know what they will look like until I get them developed a month or two later. Something about that is like it really translates to some internal process of, yeah, like deep presence and witness to everything that's happening. Um, and I think it also just it feels like a way of it feels like a way of bringing more of what I love to life, like bringing more of what moves me to life. It feels like a way of like amplifying it and holding on to it, even though the moment will leave. It's like when I take a photo of something, it's a way of like bringing it with me, a way of keeping it somewhere, even if it's just in the frame of the photo. I think the practice has this way of um, like nurturing my sense of appreciation for the world around me and my sense of like wanting to be in relationship with the world around me. And when I was younger, I was really shy and I didn't feel like I belonged and I didn't feel like I was part of anything. And I think when I had my camera, it was like this cloak of belonging almost. And I would carry my camera with me everywhere. And I was always like the friend who was taking photos of everyone. And like my local film store always called me when they had expired film in, and I would come and buy all of it. And it was just like this, it was like this extra layer of me that helped me feel more comfortable and that helped me feel, yeah, that helped me feel more at ease, like seeing people and letting people see me because I had this way of interacting that brought something different to it. Um, and I think that it's carried into, yeah, just this deep practice of presence and appreciation and desire to like really hold on to the things that I find beautiful and the things that I find moving in some way and to like let them last a little bit longer in some form.
I it feels so similarly about what I love about photography. I feel like you encapsulated it so well. And it's always so interesting to me because I find many people who don't take a lot of pictures or don't like photography, they'll say something to the effect of the exact opposite, right? Of, I don't like taking pictures because it takes me out of the moment. Is,
Mhm.
something along those lines of what they'll share, and obviously everybody gets to have their own experience, and I'm sure that is their experience, but mine has always been the exact opposite, so it's just very curious of exactly what you're sharing of it helps me be in the moment more, it helps me become more profoundly present, than I was without it a lot of times, it's an amplifier, like you're sharing, it amplifies my experience, it feels like it's almost a way to help other people understand my own experience, and I've never articulated that until just now in the call with you of I feel so misunderstood a lot of the times in my own
Yeah.
internal experience, and it feels like the photos are a way of helping take what's inside me and show it to someone else and be like, "Do you understand now? Like, can you see?"
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
feels like to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like such a gift too, because sometimes, like, when I get photos back, my husband will look through them and he'll say, like, "Wow, like, I never would have looked at that one thing for long enough to see that it could be this," and, like, so I think it helps him, like, have more appreciation for what I see too, and that sense of sharing what I see creates this other almost like this form of intimacy and this form of, like, letting myself be seen by letting people see what I see, if that makes sense? It's like, yeah, I feel like sharing photos is like a way of revealing something about myself. Even if someone doesn't exactly know what that is, it's a way of revealing something that is essential to me and something that is such an internal thing that I can, like, make external by having this image, um, which is such a beautiful process and one that that I don't reflect on a lot. So I really appreciate you asking that question because it just has me feeling really grateful for that practice.
Well, I appreciate you sharing as well because it even helped me come to my own realization on the podcast right now of a layer of importance and understanding of why I love it so much as well. And I haven't talked about that with another photographer, so I really appreciate that also. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
well, there's a line that you've written that I don't even know how long ago it's been now, Lisa. I think it was from one of your Substacks, but I've obviously carried it in my heart for a really long time, and it's one of those things where I read it and I've really allowed it to work on me. It's almost like a stone that you carry around and you keep on turning it over and over. But you wrote the relief of right-sized ambition that comes from meaning and contribution instead of ego. And I've come to many, and turning over the stone, I've come to many understandings of what that means for myself, but I would love to hear if you're willing to share what that means to you and what it meant to you when you wrote it.
Yeah, I think for a while, because I have this, like, quote, big following, I think for a while I thought it meant I needed to be someone that I'm not. And I thought it meant my work needed to become something that it's not, and that I needed to have capacity that I don't have, and that I needed to have desires that I don't have, and that I needed to, yeah, like, be somebody almost, that I needed to be somebody important, and that it signaled something about me that I needed to then prove and, like, live up to. And I think because I never really set out to have, like, this big audience or this big following, I've had to do a lot of reckoning with, "This is here, and, like, what do I wanna do with this?" And for a while, there was a lot of shame around not doing a lot with it other than, like, writing a book and having a newsletter, and, I've never made, like, multiple 6 figures. I've never, like, done big events. I've never, like, I just haven't done a lot of the things that a lot of people with big followings do. And for a long time, I thought that that meant that I was, like, not living up to my potential, or not taking advantage of what was available to me or whatever it may be. And I've just, yeah, in the last couple of years, really come to the conclusion that I just don't want most of those things. Like, what I want is to be able to write, whatever that looks like, whether it looks like writing books or writing to an email list, like, or just writing in my journal. Like, I want to be able to write and have words and language as part of what I offer, as part of what I give of service. And I want to create intimate spaces with people. And for me, that looks like hosting a workshop that has like 40 people in it rather than hosting like some big master class or something that has thousands of people. It's like my ambition is just so um not in line with the things that we're told we should strive for. Like it feels so humble and small. And I think for a while I thought that meant that I was just like dimming myself, or that it's like me not believing in myself or me not trusting myself to hold a bigger thing or whatever. But I think I just realized that actually, like, I really like having a small and simple life. And I like offering the gifts that I have in ways that feel really aligned with who I am, which is like a private and quiet person who doesn't like a lot of attention and who doesn't feel comfortable in the spotlight and who doesn't want like all these eyes on me all the time. Um, and I think I've had to really like let go of other people's ideas of what I should do or what it means to have this audience, when actually, like, for the most part, I am already doing what I want to do. And yes, I could use more confidence for sure. That's a growing edge for me. Yes, I could use more assuredness that I am doing all the things that I want to in the ways that I want to do them. But I think I have found so much relief in like letting go of this idea that I should do more just because I can. Um, and letting that be okay, even though to some it looks like not reaching my full potential or whatever other ideas I have about what other people think of me. Um, and I've had to like really let that go and come back to like, what do I want my life and my work to look like? And it is just more humble and it is more quiet, and um, it isn't the thing that I thought it needed to be for a long time. Um, and there's been a continual process of like letting that be okay that I've been engaged in and that I continue to be engaged in when I think about like what it looks like to be in integrity with myself and with my capacity and with just what I long for too.
And just as you mentioned, what a relief.
Yeah.
What a relief that ambition doesn't have to look like what the world, or in this case, like online business owners or whatever, would tell you that it has to look like. In your case, having a large following. Well, you have to monetize that large following and extract everything out of them, and build something that is really larger than you have capacity or desire to hold, or
Yeah.
turn into a life, that really isn't aligned with your own values, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so there's this permission here to realize that ambition doesn't have to look a certain way, that
Yeah.
there can be the drive of ambition to find a life in a business and a way of being that fits you and
Yeah.
your capacity and the things that you want. And this is the whole heart of my work that you just expressed here.
Yeah.
That people, the people I work with are constantly feeling this friction, this rub of like, I don't have the capacity to run online business in the way that people are telling me to. And being able to come in and say, that's okay. It can be slower, and that doesn't mean it's not ambitious. It can be smaller, and that doesn't mean it's not ambitious. It can be quieter, and that doesn't mean it's not ambitious, right?
Yeah.
And what a relief that it gets to be led by our own values and the things that feel true to us rather than has to be a certain way that other people are telling us that it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It is such a relief. And I also just ask myself, like, what am I actually ambitious for? And it's usually not for more. It's for like presence. It's for creativity. It's for room to express myself. It's for being of service. It's for being present with my family. It's for opening my capacity to let love in and to offer it more freely. It's for things that are so not touted as, traditional ambition. And I think I'm slowly like giving myself permission to ask, like, what does my work need to look like in order to match the ambitions I have outside of my work? Like, what does my work need to look like in order to support the way I want my life to feel? And moving from that place feels, yeah, like such a gift to self and like such a gift to, yeah, to my own humanity and to our way of being in the world in the ways that feel the most alive for us.
Mm. And it's so important that we recenter ourselves in that, as you're talking about in this podcast as well, over and over again, because we'll forget, right? That we recenter ourselves in how do I actually want to feel? And what is it that I actually want? Because if we don't recenter ourselves in that, we will kind of end up just by sheer drifting like, oh, I've ended up in a life and a business that actually doesn't align with my values or capacity or what I actually want or how I actually want to feel. I'm not feeling on a daily basis how I really desire to because we haven't recentered in that. We've forgotten, which have, as you've mentioned, is such a normal human part of the process. Um, but just recentering and regrounding into that over and over again.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Well, you shared recently also that you're feeling a sense of needing to prove yourself fade in a profound way, and the desire to be of service take up the space where that proving your worth once was. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that if you're willing to share.
Yeah, I think it's kind of related to what I just shared, like this sense of letting go of what I think other people need me to be and letting go of this version of myself that needs to be everything for everyone and that needs everyone to like me and that needs to have everyone's like eye of approval in order to feel okay. I think there's been this slow shedding of that and this embodiment of self-trust. Like I think that's what it is. I think it's a slow embodiment of self-trust. And I think when that embodiment happens, it's like that need to prove or please or whatever it is naturally sort of fades away. And I notice that as my own just trust in myself and what I share and how I am grows, it's like all of that just sort of naturally quiets. And I don't have to quiet it. It's like when I do this work over here, that part almost naturally takes care of itself in a way. And I think that's the process I've been moving through is like, yeah, embodying trust in myself so that all the other stuff that gets in the way of hearing my own voice and my own knowing quiets enough to like return to what's here and let that be enough and let that be all that I need. Um, and also just like really downsizing the opinions that I really care about. Like, I'm like, what do the people in my life think of what I do and of who I am? Like, what does my partner think of how I'm being? What does my child think of how I'm being? And like, can I like recenter that as what matters the most? Um, and it's like shrinking it down. Yeah, it just bolsters my self-trust in being who and how I want to be in the world. Um, and bolsters my capacity to, yeah, to do that in ways that feel aligned for me.
Mm. Yeah, I resonate with so much of that as well.
Yeah.
Well, I could continue talking forever, but I'm going to wrap it up to respect your time. But I would love to know where people can find about you and your work if they're interested to learn more.
Yeah. My website is lisaolivera.com, and pretty much everything is there. Like my Substack is there, and my Instagram is there, and past podcasts are there. Um, that's kind of the best place to go and see everything else that exists. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, are you okay with a few rapid fire questions as we close?
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay. Well, is there anything that you'd like to say in closing that feels like it needs another moment to wrap up from our podcast today?
I don't think so. I just feel so moved and so grateful for the conversation and for the what felt like co-reflection and like co-mirroring of my own process. I just felt really moved. So thank you.
Thank you. What do you wish people knew about your experience as a highly sensitive person in the world?
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. What do you wish people knew about your experience as a highly sensitive person in the world?
Hmm. I think I wish that people knew that being highly sensitive doesn't mean that you're weak. And it doesn't mean that um, you have less capacity to face life. In many ways, it actually means that you have more inner resources to be with the complexities of life.
I love that so much. What's the last thing that truly inspired you?
Um, Going to an art museum this past weekend and just witnessing what people can create.
Mm. What consistently brings you deep joy?
My daughter's laughter.
Thank you so much for your time, your presence, and really just for sharing yourself with me here in this podcast and for sharing yourself in your Substacks and your writing. I just get such a sense of your heart. And as I've mentioned, it's truly deeply impacted my life. So thank you.
Thank you. So very grateful. Thank you.